She was kind. She was patient. She forgave quickly and loved deeply. She was the friend everyone called at 2 a.m., the partner who remembered how you took your coffee, the one who never raised her voice, even when she had every right to. And somehow, for the third time in a row, she ended up sitting across from someone who drained her dry. If you've ever wondered how this keeps happening, how someone this good, this self-aware, this emotionally intelligent keeps ending up with someone this bad, you're about to find out. Because it isn't bad luck. It isn't a broken picker. It's something far more specific and far more fixable than anyone has told you. Here's the mystery we're solving today. Why does kindness, the very trait that should protect a relationship, end up acting like a magnet for the exact people who will exploit it? And here's the part that's going to sound wrong at first, so stay with me. Toxic partners are not drawn to weakness. They're drawn to a very specific, very high-functioning kind of strength. The stronger your empathy, the more attractive you are to someone who needs to be forgiven. And by the end of this video, I'm going to give you the one internal shift, a single reframe therapists use in trauma-informed work that changes who you attract before you even open your mouth on a first date. But to get there, we need to understand the hidden reason this keeps happening. And it starts somewhere you'd never expect. Not in your dating life, but in your nervous system. Here's the first thing almost nobody tells you about attraction. Your brain does not search for people who are good for you. It searches for people who feel familiar. And familiar is not the same thing as healthy. If you grew up in a home where love came with conditions, where you had to earn affection, manage someone else's moods, or stay quiet to keep the peace, your nervous system didn't learn what safety feels like. It learned what survival feels like. And here's the twist. Survival can feel a lot like chemistry. Psychologists call this affective realism. The idea that your emotions don't just respond to reality, they actually shape how you perceive it. So when you meet someone stable, calm, consistent, your body doesn't register that as attraction. It registers it as boring, because there's no spike, no chase, no task to complete. But when you meet someone unpredictable, someone who runs hot and cold, someone you have to work to keep, your amygdala, the threat detection center of your brain, lights up. And that activation gets mislabeled by your mind as excitement, as a spark, as this could be something. So the good person, the empathetic person, isn't choosing toxicity on purpose. Their nervous system is choosing familiarity, and their compassionate mind is doing the rest of the work, quietly rewriting red flags into "he's just going through something," or "she's had a hard past, she needs patience." Which brings us to something even more important. Because familiarity alone doesn't trap you. There's a second ingredient, and it's the one that turns kind people into full-time caretakers. Before we go further, I want you to sit with something for a second. Think about your last relationship, or the one you're in right now. Ask yourself honestly, did you fall for who they were, or who you believed you could help them become? If that question stung a little, keep watching, because we're about to name the exact pattern behind it. Good people often carry a quiet, unspoken belief. My worth comes from what I can fix. Not in those exact words. Nobody thinks that consciously. But it shows up in the pattern. It shows up in who they're drawn to. This is what therapists sometimes call the fixer identity, a version of self-worth that gets activated specifically around potential, around someone's unrealized best self. You don't fall for who he is. You fall for who he could be if someone finally loved him right. You don't fall for her moods. You fall for the soft, wounded person underneath them that only you seem to see. And here's where it gets dangerous. Not because empathy is bad, but because empathy without a filter becomes an open invitation. Toxic partners, whether consciously or not, are exceptionally good at detecting this. They can sense almost instantly who will interpret bad behavior as a wound instead of a warning, who will offer patience instead of consequences, who will stay in the room a little longer, explain it away a little more generously, give one more chance than is wise. This isn't about blaming the good person, it's the opposite. It's about understanding that their compassion is being used as a resource, mined quietly, by someone who never intends to change. Picture this. A man is short-tempered with a waiter, but then turns to his partner and tells her she's the only person who understands him. In that single moment, something happens in her mind that feels like relief, but it's actually the second mechanism we need to talk about. Because it's not just that she forgives him, it's that his behavior doesn't match his words, and her mind quietly resolves that mismatch in his favor. This is called incongruence, the gap between someone's words and their actions. And healthy nervous systems are supposed to flag that gap as a warning sign, a red flag. But something strange happens in people with a strong caretaking instinct. Instead of trusting the behavior, they trust the explanation. He says he loves you more than anyone ever has, but he cancels plans, dismisses your feelings, and disappears when things get hard. A healthy alarm bell would say, the words and the actions don't match. Something is wrong here. But the good person's mind does something different. It says, he must be scared of how much he loves me. He must be self-sabotaging because he's never had something this real before. This is one of the most important things to understand about why smart, emotionally intelligent people get trapped in toxic dynamics. It's not that they can't see the inconsistency. It's that they're gifted, genuinely gifted, at building a compassionate, plausible story around it. And a toxic partner will feed that story generously because it keeps them safe from consequences. Every apology, every "I promise it won't happen again," every flash of vulnerability becomes fuel for a narrative that says, stay, because you're the one who understands him. And this pattern doesn't stay still. It doesn't happen all at once. It creeps. Which brings us to the mechanism that makes all of this sustainable over months and even years. The slow, almost invisible erosion of the one thing that was supposed to protect her in the first place. Nobody sets a boundary and then abandons it all at once. That's not how it happens. It happens one small compromise at a time, so gradually that by the time the boundary is gone, it feels like it was never really there to begin with. It starts small. You say you won't tolerate being ignored for days at a time. And then one day, he goes quiet for 48 hours, and you tell yourself it's a one-time thing. You said you'd never accept being spoken to harshly, and then it happens once. He apologizes beautifully, and the boundary quietly shifts to allow it as long as he says sorry. Each time this happens, the brain does something called recalibration. It resets its baseline for what's acceptable, using the most recent behavior instead of your original standard. This is why people in long-term toxic relationships often say, with real confusion in their voice, "I don't even know when it got this bad." It's because there was no single moment. There were 100 tiny moments, each one slightly worse than the last. Each one absorbed and normalized by a person whose empathy made them generous with second chances. And this is the exact mechanism a toxic partner relies on, often without even consciously strategizing it. Push a little, watch what's tolerated. Push a little more. The good person is indulgable. They're operating on a boundary system that was trained since childhood to prioritize connection over self-protection. And that training is precisely what's being exploited. So, now we have 4 pieces of the puzzle. Familiarity mistaken for chemistry, a fixer identity that finds purpose in potential, an incongruence illusion that explains away red flags, and boundaries that erode one quiet compromise at a time. But there's one thread connecting all 4, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Here it is. The hidden reason good people keep attracting toxic partners isn't naivety. It isn't low self-esteem in the way people usually mean it. It's that somewhere along the way, their sense of self-worth got quietly fused with being needed. Not being loved, being needed. There's a difference, and it's the entire answer to the mystery we opened with. When your identity is built around being the strong one, the understanding one, the one who doesn't give up on people, a calm, secure partner who needs nothing to fix, doesn't activate that identity at all. But someone complicated, someone wounded, someone who visibly needs saving, that person doesn't just spark chemistry. They offer purpose, and purpose is one of the most addictive feelings a human being can chase. That's the padlock we promised to open at the start of this video. The technique isn't about learning to spot red flags faster, although that helps. It's about asking yourself one uncomfortable question every time you feel a spark of attraction. Am I drawn to this person? Or am I drawn to the feeling of being essential to them? Because those two things feel almost identical in the moment, and only one of them leads somewhere safe. If any part of this felt uncomfortably familiar, that discomfort is not a diagnosis. It's information. Recognizing the pattern doesn't mean something is broken in you. It means the very empathy that made you vulnerable can now become the thing that protects you, once you know how it's being used. Start small. When you meet someone new, notice whether your calm feels like boredom. Sit with that discomfort instead of chasing it away with chaos. Notice if you're building excuses for behavior that doesn't match someone's words. And instead of asking, why did they do that? Ask, what did they actually do? Let the actions speak without your compassion translating for them. And practice holding a boundary the very first time it's tested, not the 5th time, because the first time is when it actually still counts. You don't need to become guarded or cold to protect yourself. You just need to understand that your kindness is not an all-access pass. It's a gift, and gifts are meant for people who show, through consistent action, that they can actually hold them. But here's what makes this even trickier. Some of the most damaging partners don't look chaotic at all in the beginning. They look like the safest person you've ever met. Almost too perfect, almost too understanding, almost too fast to make you feel chosen. It's a completely different psychological pattern, one that hides in plain sight behind kindness itself. And in the next video, we're going to decode exactly how it works, and exactly how to tell the difference between someone who's genuinely safe and someone who's just very good at appearing that way. If this helped you understand a pattern in your own life a little more clearly, that's exactly what this channel is here for. Stay curious about your own patterns, because understanding them is the first step to changing them.